Welcome to another deep dive. This time, we're tackling marijuana and depression.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty hot topic.
Mhm.
And we've got some great sources to dig into. We've got the Mayo Clinic,
Okay.
we've got Healthline,
Uh-huh.
and we've got a brand new study that Forbes is highlighting.
Cool.
So no matter where you're coming from with this, whether you're just curious
Right.
or prepping for a debate with your friends
Yeah.
or really trying to, get up on the research,
Hmm.
we're going to give you the info. And hey, if you like what you hear today, please consider subscribing to the Mind Mosaic channel. We're a growing channel. We need all the support we can get, and we really appreciate it.
Absolutely.
So before we get too far, let's get one thing straight. We are not advocating for the use or trade of cannabis.
Right.
Our goal here is to present some of the latest medical studies and expert opinions so you can make up your own mind. Sound good?
Sounds great. Let's dive in.
All right, let's do it. Okay, first up, this kind of blew my mind. The Mayo Clinic says some studies show that frequent marijuana smokers are more often diagnosed with depression than non-smokers. Now, when I first read that, I was like, oh, okay, so that's it, right?
Yeah.
Case closed. But I'm guessing it's not that simple.
Yeah, not quite. You've got to remember, correlation doesn't equal causation.
Okay, say more about that.
Just because two things happen together doesn't mean one causes the other.
Right.
It's like people eat more ice cream when it's sunny out, but that doesn't mean ice cream causes sunshine.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right. So there could be other factors at play here.
Like what?
Well, genetics could be a big one. Certain genes might make someone more prone to both depression and maybe, liking substances a little more.
So it's not that one causes the other, but they might be related somehow, deeper down.
Exactly.
Interesting. Okay, so genes can be part of it. What else?
Environment plays a huge role, too.
Yeah, for sure.
Someone who grew up with a lot of trauma or stress might be more susceptible to depression and maybe turn to substances to cope.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the marijuana directly causing depression, but more like a whole bunch of things interacting.
Right. It's complicated.
Yeah, it is. And it also makes me think about people who might already be depressed and are using marijuana to try and feel better.
Oh, yeah, self-medicating.
Exactly. Like if someone's struggling with depression and they smoke marijuana and it makes them feel a bit better, even temporarily, they might keep using it, even though it's not really addressing the root of the problem.
Absolutely. In those cases, the marijuana use might be a symptom of the depression, not the cause.
Right. Okay. That adds another layer. And the Mayo Clinic also mentioned that sometimes heavy marijuana users can seem depressed just because of how the drug affects their emotions.
Oh, right.
It can kind of dull things, right?
Yeah, it can have this flattening effect on emotions, so they might appear depressed,
Yeah.
but it's more like the drug's doing it, not a true clinical depression.
Huh, interesting. So we've got genetics, we've got environment, we've got potential self-medication, and we've got the drug's effects themselves.
Yeah.
Wow, this is way more nuanced than I initially thought. And it seems like marijuana's impact on mental health goes way beyond just depression, too.
It does. Both the Mayo Clinic and Healthline bring up the links between marijuana and some other mental health conditions, even serious ones like schizophrenia and psychosis.
Oh, wow. Okay, hold on. So does that mean marijuana can cause these conditions?
Well, the research is still being done, but it looks like for folks who are already predisposed to these conditions,
Okay.
using marijuana might make them more likely to develop them.
So it's not like a guaranteed thing,
Right.
but it could be a trigger for those who are already at risk.
Exactly. It's like if there's already a fire smoldering, marijuana might be the thing that makes it flare up.
Got it. Okay, what about people who already have these conditions, like psychosis? Could marijuana make their symptoms worse?
Yeah, unfortunately, that seems to be the case. Psychosis is when someone loses touch with reality, right?
Right.
Often with hallucinations or delusions, and marijuana can actually make those symptoms more intense.
Oh, wow. That's tough.
It is. And it's not just limited to those really severe mental illnesses either. There's even some early evidence linking marijuana use to suicide attempts in teens.
Really?
Yeah, although more research is definitely needed there.
Yeah, that's really heavy.
It is.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot of potential downsides. Is there any upside here?
Well, that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, I like interesting.
Both Healthline and Forbes talk about some pretty groundbreaking research from the University at Buffalo.
Okay.
And it all centers around this thing called the endocannabinoid system.
Okay, I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to lie, I don't really know what it means.
So, think of it this way. Your brain has these little messengers called endocannabinoids. They're naturally produced chemicals that help regulate all sorts of functions, from how you move to how you think, how you feel, even how you behave. They're like the brain's internal balancing act.
So they're kind of like tiny air traffic controllers in our brains, making sure everything runs smoothly.
Haha. Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Okay, so what does this have to do with marijuana?
Well, here's the thing. Chronic stress, the kind that just wears you down day after day,
Oh, yeah, I know that kind of stress.
can actually suppress the production of these crucial endocannabinoids. And guess what they found in animal studies? When endocannabinoid activity goes down, you start seeing behaviors that look a lot like depression.
Wait, so you're saying chronic stress could mess up our brain's natural mood regulators?
Exactly. And that's where that Forbes article comes in. They talk about this new study from Germany suggesting that medical marijuana might actually help restore that normal endocannabinoid function and, as a result, improve mood in people with chronic depression.
Hold on. So instead of being the bad guy, marijuana could actually help fix what chronic stress has broken.
Potentially, yes. It's a completely different way of looking at how marijuana might affect mental health.
Okay, yeah, I'm definitely intrigued. I want to hear more about this study.
Let's do it. So this German study, it wasn't huge, but it had some really interesting findings.
Okay.
They had 59 patients, and they all had chronic depression that just didn't get better with the usual treatments like therapy or medication.
So these were people who had basically tried everything else and were looking for something new.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what they did in this study is they had these patients use medical cannabis,
Okay.
specifically vaporized flower, for 18 weeks.
Okay.
And get this, they saw a pretty significant reduction in depression severity across the board.
That's great. Do we know, like, how much their symptoms improved?
Yeah, so almost 24% of the people in the study saw a 50% reduction in their depression symptoms after just 6 weeks.
Wow, that's a huge improvement and pretty fast, too. But I imagine there are concerns about side effects, right? That's always a big thing with marijuana.
Of course, yeah. But in this study, only about 35% of the participants reported any side effects at all, and they were all mild.
Like what kind of mild?
Things like dry mouth or dry eyes, maybe increased appetite.
Oh.
Nothing serious. And importantly, nobody reported any serious side effects like psychosis.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Yeah.
But you said this was a small study, right? So does that mean we should take these findings with a grain of salt?
Yeah, that's a really important point. As promising as these results are, we need to remember they're just preliminary.
Okay.
We need more research, bigger studies to really confirm these findings and figure out the long-term effects of using medical marijuana for depression. It's best to be cautiously optimistic, not jump to conclusions.
That makes sense. Cautious optimism. Yeah. I like that. So what about people who aren't into the idea of medical marijuana,
Yeah.
or for whom it's just not an option? What else can people do to deal with depression?
Well, there are a number of traditional treatments that have a good track record.
Okay.
Like psychotherapy or talk therapy can be really helpful for mild depression. It gives people a safe space to work through their thoughts and feelings and develop coping strategies.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And then for moderate to severe cases, a combo of psychotherapy and antidepressants is often recommended. Antidepressants can help to adjust those chemical imbalances in the brain that contribute to depression.
Right. So those are some important options that have helped a lot of people. But are there things people can do on their own, alongside therapy or medication, to kind of boost their mental well-being?
Absolutely. You can definitely take an active role in your own mental health.
So, like, what kind of things are we talking about? What can people do in their daily lives to make a difference?
Well, managing stress is huge. Like we were talking about earlier, that chronic stress can really mess with your endocannabinoid system.
Right?
And finding healthy ways to manage that stress can be a game changer.
Yeah, but it feels like everyone's stressed these days. How do you even begin to tackle that?
It's true, stress is everywhere. But there are things you can do. Some people find it helps to have a structured routine, waking up at the same time each day, eating regular meals, making sure to get some exercise.
Okay.
Other people find journaling really helpful, or mindfulness practices like meditation. Spending time in nature can be amazing for stress, too. And then, of course, there's the power of social connection. Having close relationships and a support system can make a world of difference.
Yeah, for sure.
And don't forget to make time for things you enjoy, whether it's reading, listening to music, whatever your hobbies are.
Right, the fun stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
These little things might seem small, but they can really add up and impact your well-being.
I love that. So it sounds like these coping strategies are good to do no matter what other treatments you're using, whether it's medication, therapy, or even medical marijuana.
Absolutely. It's not about choosing one or the other. It's about building a strong foundation for your mental health no matter what else you're doing. And just a reminder, if you are thinking about medical marijuana as an option, it's crucial to talk to your doctor. Laws and regulations are all over the place, and they can give you personalized advice based on your situation.
Great point.
Mm.
Okay, so we've covered a lot today. We started with that surprising link between marijuana and depression. We dug into the whole endocannabinoid system and chronic stress. And now we're looking at a whole range of treatments and coping tools.
Yeah, it's a lot.
This is definitely a complex topic.
It is, and I think it really shows how much we still don't know about the brain and how substances like marijuana affect it. But it also shows how important it is to stay informed, talk about these things openly, and remember that there's no one-size-fits-all solution when it comes to mental health. What works for one person might not work for another, and that's totally fine.
Yeah, I like that.
The important thing is to find what works best for you and to get support when you need it.
Yeah, my head's spinning a little, but in a good way.
Yeah.
We've gone from that initial, like, wait, marijuana and depression are linked
Right.
thing to
Right.
this whole new understanding of, like, how the endocannabinoid system works and how medical marijuana could actually be part of the solution. It seems like there's still so much we don't know.
Absolutely. I think this deep dive has really highlighted how much we're still learning about the brain, you know, and how substances like marijuana interact with all those complex systems.
Yeah, it's fascinating. But there is a sense of hope, right? Like seeing these new possibilities emerge
Yeah.
for treating conditions like chronic depression, especially for people who haven't had success with traditional treatments.
It's definitely hopeful, but I think it's important to stay grounded too. We have to be critical of the research, make sure the evidence is solid, and not get carried away by hype or, oversimplifying things.
For sure. Like with anything health-related, being informed, talking to experts, and making choices that are right for you is key.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power, right? The more we understand about these complex issues, the better decisions we can make for our own well-being. And that's really what Mind Mosaic is all about, isn't it?
Totally. We're all about giving people the knowledge they need, encouraging them to ask questions, and having these open, honest conversations about important topics.
Speaking of open and honest, something's been on my mind. We've been focusing on medical marijuana, but what about recreational use? Do you think the risks and benefits are different there?
That's a great question. Probably deserves its own deep dive, honestly.
Yeah.
I think the biggest difference comes down to intention.
How so?
With medical marijuana, there's a specific goal, right? You're trying to treat a condition,
Right.
and it's all done under the supervision of a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But with recreational use, the motivation is different. It's about relaxing, socializing, experimenting.
Exactly. And the research on those long-term effects of recreational use is still kind of up in the air, especially for young people whose brains are still developing.
Right, there's definitely more to learn there. And we have to remember, just because something's legal doesn't automatically mean it's safe or right for everyone.
Definitely not.
We all need to make informed decisions about our health.
Couldn't agree more. I think it's all about building a culture of understanding where we can talk openly about these things without judgment or stigma. People need to feel safe asking questions, sharing their experiences, and reaching out for support.
That's so important. It's all about recognizing that we're all on our own journeys, and we're all doing our best with the information we have. Well, it looks like we've reached the end of another deep dive. I always like to wrap things up with a thought-provoking question for our listeners. You got one?
I do. We talked about how medical marijuana might help bring balance to the endocannabinoid system. But what if there are other ways to achieve that same balance without using drugs? Could things like mindfulness, exercise, or spending time in nature have a similar effect on our brain chemistry?
Whoa, that's really interesting. It opens up a whole new world of possibilities for supporting mental health naturally.
Right. It's about exploring all the tools we have, both new and old, to understand and nurture our well-being.
I love that. It's a holistic approach. It's not about quick fixes. It's about embracing the journey of self-discovery. So, to everyone listening, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep seeking out the knowledge and practices that work for you. And don't forget to subscribe to Mind Mosaic for more deep dives into the fascinating world of the mind. Until next time, stay curious and be kind to yourself.
And to each other.